Pete. How you doing, my friend?
Good. How are you, Todd?
I'm good, man. Well, we're dealing with a lot of garbage. Right before the show, we had massive attacks in multiple areas, but it is what it is. We're dealing with it, and we're getting good at dealing with it. So it's all good. It's part of the job. So
Y-
I have a lot teed up for you. I have the Zelensky video. I have a lot of images you sent. So, but I want to ask you first about the Hegseth speech. I played the Patton speech at the beginning of the show. I thought the
mhm.
speech was fantastic. It was what needed to be said. The question now is execution. What say you?
Yeah, that was a great summary, Todd. When you listen to him, he hit on all the key points
Mm.
that used to be foundational to our
Yeah,
military. No one would have batted an eye if someone had said that back in the early 2000s or in the 90s. And so everything he talked about, physical fitness,
yeah.
you can't be a warrior, you can't be a functioning, competent warrior unless you're physically fit. So that's just a non-negotiable, and it's across the board, and there's no prejudice. It's the most objective criteria you can find given the requirement of the job. Then the merit-based promotion, just saying that out loud to those general officers. And remember, one of the issues that the Department of Defense has is this tainted accession process, promotion process has been going on since 2009. That's when the Obama administration changed the criteria for selection. They started with the four-star general selection process, and then it just leaked all the way down. So we've got generals sitting in that room who are going, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for that. They're not all taking it in a way that you and I are going, wow, yes, yes.
Well, he said that
So
in the speech. He said, "If you're cringing at this speech, it's time for you to resign."
yeah,
I
yeah.
started clapping. I'm like, yeah,
No, I give the guy a lot of credit. A lot of one of the problems with that job, and I totally agree with the separation. Civilian leadership. The person should be a civilian. He's different. He was reserve. He was
mm,
working in a civilian job, so he's kind of a hybrid. But most of the civilians are intimidated by the four stars and the
yes.
brass, and they don't feel comfortable talking to them and telling them, "Here's the way it's going to be." And he's obviously very comfortable with that, very self-actualized, just
That's a
all
really good.
around.
That's a good point because I felt like he came into his own here. Because yes, he's young. What was it? Milley or one of the other generals said, "I'm not gonna. I don't. I'm not used to reporting to a major or some crap like that. Like disrespectful crap. I mean, it's civilian authority, dude. That's what you're reporting to." And I really thought Hegseth came into the position during this speech. Before I've seen him as kind of, as you said, timid, maybe a little unsure of himself, but this was real today.
Yeah, agree. Bravo, Hegseth.
So let's move on to Ukraine. Do you want to play that Zelensky video first? Is that where you want
Yeah,
to go?
we're just going to start with Zelensky at the UN, and this is an example of what we've been talking about, the propaganda cycle, which is now in full 100% one-up mode with a nuance. The propaganda target has shifted. It used to be focused primarily on the Russian people,
Hmm.
trying to, delude them into thinking everything was hopeless. They need to get rid of Putin and their government, bring in a new government, and then everything will be okay. But really, the whole goal of the EU and the globalists is to get rid of Putin. It's not. It's more personal than it is nationalistic against Russia. So, you know, they they they've been focusing on the people. That's for years it was on the Russian people, but that has shifted. The propaganda target now is the Western citizens of the West, the U.S., of Europe, trying to get us to believe that there's Russia presents an existential threat to Europe, and by proxy to the United States, and that something needs to be done. They need to go to a war footing. They need to take special dispensation. So remember, the three-step process was make a lie. The bigger, the more controversial, the better. Repeat the lie through the global MSM network as often as possible over time. And then third, pivot off that lie and not only build new lies off it, but use that lie as in a factual way to prove the new lies that you're making up. So go ahead, we could show a quick bite of him, sound bite of him at the UN.
Can guarantee security. Only strong alliances, only strong partners, and only our own weapons. The 21st century isn't much different from the past. If a nation wants peace, it still has to work on weapons. It's sick, but that's the reality. Not international law, not cooperation. Weapons decide who survives. Excellencies, you know perfectly well international law doesn't work fully unless you have powerful friends who are truly willing to stand up for it. And even that doesn't work without weapons. We are now living through the most destructive arms race in human history, because this time includes artificial intelligence. And if there are no real security guarantees except friends and weapons, and if the world can't respond even to old threats, and if there is no strong platform for international security, will there be any place left on Earth that's still safe for people? We need global rules now.
So he goes on, and I'll just sum up to you some of the highlights, because he went on and on. There's nobody in the auditorium, and this we can maybe show it next time. It's kind of funny. There's an image that shows the empty auditorium, and then to Ukraine and Europe, there's an image where they photoshopped in the place being full. But here's the highlight of what he said. He said, none of what is happening today would have happened if Russian President Putin had not started this full-scale aggression. He warned the use of Zelensky warned the use of chemical weapons and famine as weapons against his people, to include the abduction of thousands of Ukrainian children. He also noted recent drone and fighter jet incursions into Poland and Estonia. And then he summed up by saying, stopping Russia now is cheaper than wondering who will be the first to create a simple drone carrying a nuclear warhead. So the reason I summed it up is every major propaganda lie / talking point from about the last 6 months, he pivoted off of just what we're talking about. He used in a factual way. Okay, so none of this, just to start, none of this would have happened if Putin had not started this full-scale aggression. So that's a propaganda lie. The war was started in 2014 by the EU and the Biden administration overthrowing the Yanukovych government. Like touching a rolling ball, when you touch it, you change its future trajectory. You also change where it ends up. Everything that's happened since 2014 is because of that overthrow. People need to get that in their heads. This war is because of that overthrow, and the passion, the hatred, the contempt that this war has created is because of that war, because of the neo-Nazi ultranationalist attack on the Eastern Ukrainians. He warned the use of chemical weapons and famines. So that's just blatant fear with no basis in fact. Chemical weapons, if the only ones who are suspected of using chemical weapons are the Ukrainians, because there's still 13 biolabs that were put in by the U.S. that no one knows what their purpose is or what they're producing. And then, of course, he pivoted off what he called the recent Russian drone and fighter jet incursion into Poland and Estonia. And then he tops it all off by doing what we talked about. Not only does he pivot off the lie of the drone incursion into Poland and the fighter jets in Estonia, he then builds off it. It says, stopping Russia now is cheaper than wondering who will be the first to create a simple drone carrying a nuclear warhead. So by doing that, he gets all of the Europeans to start thinking, wow, what's to stop them from putting a nuclear warhead on a drone?
You can see the progression, right? I mean, okay, we're going to create a drone incursion, which is false. We're going to make them scared of drones, and then you lay on the nuke layer to that. That's fascinating observation there, Pete.
Yeah. And so just to continue off that, now, just as we narrated, so remember, this started with Kellogg in Ukraine. He was the first guy. This was our last week's show. We showed it. He said we'd kick their ass. Russia is not winning. Russia's losing. Ukraine is winning. So he started those sound bites, and we watched as they went around the globe. We're going to show Lindsey Graham talking the same thing. Whoever wrote Trump's Truth Social, which you sent me an article on that. It looks like Sebastian Gorka had his hands on that. He's a huge anti-Putin, pro-Ukraine guy himself. He's said some crazy things in the past. So it's still a full-scale propaganda war. And unfortunately, like we said, the original targets, the Russians, are impervious to it. The Russian people believe so deeply in their own government and are so supportive of Putin and Lavrov and the rest of his foreign policy team that this stuff bounces off them, like water off a duck's back. But now there's a new thing. And again, we saw Kellogg start it in Ukraine, and that's that Russia is a paper tiger, and the continuation of this, Ukraine is winning. And we had an article this week. I don't know if you have it. It's the one that was in the Financial Times.
Yeah, I do have it. I'm not sure.
And so you go ahead. It's by Yuval Harari, the Israeli historian, who's also happens to be the WEF, the World Economic Forum's main spokesperson, and he's the guy who believes that the world is overpopulated.
I didn't realize he wrote that. That's amazing.
Yeah. His quote is, "We just don't need the vast majority of the population in the early 21st century, given modern technology, rendering human labor economically and militarily redundant."
So he's all in for the depopulation. That's what's going on here. He's
exactly.
He's authenticating.
So here's a guy,
right?
Yeah, here's a guy putting out an article. We need to keep fighting in Ukraine because Ukraine is winning, Russia's losing. And this is the main World Economic Forum representative and spokesman for depopulation. That's his thing, and that's what he believes in. But the article itself, go ahead, Todd.
No, I was going to say that's shocking. I mean, that's talking about connecting the dots. Wow.
Yeah. So the article is just lie upon lie upon lie. It goes again that how can we take Russia seriously? They can't even defeat Ukraine after 3.5 years, and it's laughable, really, because as we pointed out in our last episode, Russia is not fighting Ukraine. They're fighting NATO.
Yes.
And how can anyone think that Russia is not fighting NATO when you think of what they're up against? Ukraine has Starlink at its disposal. No other nation on earth, including the U.S., does not have a ubiquitous digital wireless network that they can count on. This being satellite, so it makes it so it's secure. They have Abrams tanks, F-16s, HIMARS, Leopard tanks, Javelins, the cutting-edge EW warfare, ATACMS, and of course, countless amounts of hard cash to pay mercenaries and the troops training them. We know what is on the books. We've given U.S. over $300 billion to Ukraine. And the sanctions against Russia are believed to have taken a toll of about $400 billion. So that's another like weighted example of how this is not Russia against Ukraine. It's Russia against NATO. And so the central premise of his article that Ukraine's winning is that Russia's not. And of course, my comment on that is it's very easy to say that you're winning if you redefine what losing is. And that's what this article has done. It just changes the meaning of losing and tries to say that they're winning.
Well, I'm going to put that out on the network later today. That's a fantastic observation. I didn't realize Harari had wrote that. So you have, just for our audience sake, you have the guy who is in charge of depopulating the world for the World Economic Forum, who's wrote the book that God is dead and all this kind of stuff, is the guy wanting the Ukraine war to continue. I mean, that's depopulation 101. Here, let me play Lindsey just for a little bit, and then we can go back.
Yeah.
Is South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, you have 85 co-sponsors for a bill to sanction countries that are funding Putin's war machine. Look, it's a nuclear-armed country. We don't want a conflict with Putin. I don't like that Biden got us into a proxy war, and he was giving all of these weapons. Trump is selling the weapons, and he's basically saying, maybe Putin is a paper tiger. He should have won that war in 7 days. Didn't happen.
Trump 2028. I hope this never ends. When he asks, what should you do if a Russian jet flies into your country? Shoot it down. He didn't say that. Out of his way to get Putin to the table. We don't want to humiliate Russia. We just want to end the war. And to our friends in Russia, here's what Trump did today. He told NATO, I'll sell you all the weapons you want. You can provide them to Ukraine. And as to Ukraine, you can use them any way you want. So to the Russian military, you're going to be up against the high-end American weapons that will be sold to NATO for the benefit of Ukraine. And this war is coming to your backyard here with no limitations like Biden. He's everything Biden wasn't. He stood up to the UN.
Okay, that's enough of that. But we don't want to hear too much. Lindsey, I can't take it. But
I know.
I mean, he's just, man, that bank account must be sitting pretty, Lindsey. I mean, you must be getting a lot of lobbyist money or WEF money or something. But the warmongering is amazing.
Yeah, and it also, we talked last week about Trump's shocking 180-degree turnaround on his comments about the war, saying in that Truth Social post, saying Ukraine could take back their terrain, they could win. And then we talked, it's most likely another part of the PSYOP. He's just agreeing with everything these crazed EU and globalists are saying in order to turn it over to them. Okay, you say you're winning, you can do all this, have at it, go at it. But it turns out we're finding that Trump doesn't write all his Truth Social posts, and I believe it. That thing was full of all these talking points, and you just saw Lindsey Graham. If you go back to that, he used two of them. He said, kick your ass and paper tiger. So both came out from Kellogg, both came from Ukraine. And now you see Trump, hopefully him or one of his people saw our episode last week where we talked about how absurd it was to call Russia a paper tiger because, and there was a direct because for it, because they've been fighting for 3.5 years and still haven't been able to defeat a country like Ukraine, who had the biggest army in Europe and is actually just a proxy for NATO in general. And the comparison was, what does that make us, the United States, after 20 years fighting against the Afghans? We must be a paper tiger too, by that definition. That's what we talked about last week. And
Yeah,
Trump
and
has now
another
come out
point,
and pulled that back.
another point I want to make is that we're giving them a chance to just test all their weaponry against us, against our high-end
Yep.
stuff. There's no,
Yep.
there's no imagination anymore. You know whether the Patriots work or not because you've tested them, and you can, refine your tactics against our best weapon systems. To that, I find really disturbing.
Yeah, and again, that's where this thing, it's not linear. You can't take a logical purpose for anything that's happening and pull it all the way through, because it hits these points of illogic. And that's one of them right there. You'll hear over and over that this is a testing ground. We're learning a lot. No, we're not, because we still have the same weapon systems. We haven't changed any production schedules. We haven't said we're getting rid of the Patriot, the M1. We're just trying to modify them and trying to rationalize why they failed. There's been a couple of reports. They're not unclassified yet. Both those reports spend most of the report. These are DOD on weapon systems in Ukraine. Spend most of the report blaming the Ukrainians for not using the weapons properly.
Which is even worse because that gives them the ability to test and find weakness, right?
Yep. But these generals, the foundation of these supporters for the war, which you just put out an article, I just read it before I came on, about the shame of these ex-generals. You had Hodges on there, but includes Petraeus and Kellogg. And it is shameful. I've come to that. I'm totally embarrassed by these general officers, but they're not just doing their job as paid influencers. They're driven by emotions. They have been diametrically wrong for 3 years. Diametrically calling out that the war will only take a year. The article that just came out, Ukraine's winning, says no one expected Ukraine to win. Really, everybody did. It was the biggest army in Europe, backed by U.S. Army's best and brightest generals and their staffs, commanding and controlling from Wiesbaden. Biden administration gave carte blanche, despite what you've heard, that Biden put handcuffs on the Ukrainians. He didn't. And remember, we now know that it wasn't the Ukrainians begging for ATACMS. That was Cavoli. And, that was the American generals who failed in their counteroffensive. And they said, we need better weapons. The story just continues to be built on a house of lies. And that's what we're trying to do by pointing it out why it's happening.
Speaking of lies, let's play Donald Tusk in Poland. His comments.
The biggest and most important task for all opinion leaders today is to make other people realize in depth, profoundly, that goes in the depths of people's minds and their hearts. We should make Western societies and transatlantic society, we must make them aware. This is war. We didn't want it, unwanted war. Sometimes strange, a new type of war. But this is war. Like it or not, this is our war.
This is war. This is what we've waited for. This is it, boys. This is war. 99 red balloons. I just have that reflection back to the 80s, man. The song. It's just insane. I mean, these guys want. I mean, he's being paid by somebody to do this. I mean, he's indoctrinated or something. I mean, he wants a World War III. That's what they want. Depopulation, Harari, all of it. It's right there up in your grill.
Yeah. So let me tell you something that came out this week, and I got this from a source on the ground. It came out as a result of what's going on in Moldova right now, and the classic EU throwing of another election. The populist won. The EU came in, did a recount, and guess what happened? The EU, pro-EU government won again. And what came out of it came from Ukraine. And it turns out there's a group of individuals, I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to be specific about this, have been tracking the message, the evolution of these propaganda messages as they spread across the globe. And you wonder, well, why would you do that? Well, like anything, if you track it over time, you begin to see patterns. And what's happened is an overwhelming pattern has coalesced, which shows that the genesis of these propaganda weapons or propaganda messages is always from Ukraine. And so Zelensky, one of the things that has been tipping him off is Zelensky has been everything that the EU has said over the last about 3 to 6 months starts with Zelensky. And now there's a asterisk to that. It starts with Zelensky and Kellogg. And so the hypothesis, which is backed up by another incident that just happened during one of the heaviest night bombardments in Kyiv, an American on the ground tried to travel to one side of the city. And when they got there, a building they always thought was abandoned had about 500 people outside of it. They had been evacuated from the building. And the individual was American, asked, well, who are they? And he said, well, they're part of there was a slip up. They're part of the censorship network, the censorship network. So what we're finding out, not just with the algorithm, but this incident where this individual saw all these people and no one ever knew they were working. It's around the clock, 24/7. Is what we've pointed out in the past and Mike Benz narrated numerous times, and that's that the global censorship network is based out of Ukraine. And why is that significant? It's because we're starting to realize one of the main reasons these EU and these globalists are so obsessed with keeping the war going, because it doesn't make sense on any other factor, but it does when you consider the global censorship network. Think a cauterized IT network. In other words, it's not connected to the global web. It can come in and out of the global web, but it's cauterized from it. This takes all the potential for tracking it back to, as an example, the Democratic Party in the United States or to EU headquarters in Europe. So this is not only where they control the world narrative, it's where they control world elections. And they do it for Ukraine because it gives them this neutral site with none of their fingerprints on it.
Wow.
And
that's big.
Yeah,
we reported.
It is big.
You know, and I'm trying to find it right now. I'll see if I can pull it up. But back in 19 and 20, we were completely deplatformed because of this reporting where we talked about, it wasn't as specific as what you're saying, but we talked about how the campaign against Manafort, which was fake, came out of Ukraine. The campaign against Bernie Sanders came out of Ukraine.
Yep.
All of it was being handled from Ukraine. So that's fascinating.
You were right, man. And so think about it. That's because we've been just scratching our heads. And we just saw, was that Tusk we just saw from Poland? So And you just go, how can this guy be talking about war like it's World War II and the Nazi army just crossed his border? What fool would talk this way? There's got to be something more. And I believe this is what we've discovered it. I believe it's the global censorship network, and there's probably a global monetary network that supports that, a way to launder money, which we already know about with all the NGOs, but a way to launder money through Ukraine too. But the global censorship and global election throwing network is there. And if you remember in 2020, there's a huge amount of electronic signatures that were leaving the U.S. from the swing states, and they were going to where? To Ukraine. So it's a real possibility. We'll stay on it. Like I said,
you got to let me know if you get more on that. You got to let me know.
I will.
So
but
let me just say
you.
This is real quick. This is an article from 2020 where we put out the Obama weaponized the federal government against the U.S. people, and it all started in Ukraine. This is under our investigations tab, the information operation against the American people. So you know
What's
what?
the date on that, Todd?
August 2, 2020.
Wow.
So for our audience, if you want to be early, dudes, this is it, man. We pay the price for it, and that's why they're shutting us down every time they can. But we've been on this for years. Back to you.
Yeah. So again, just thinking about that, think from the EU's perspective. EU knows, just like the Democratic Party, they cannot survive without cheating. They know, because their ideas are bankrupt. They get it. They're finally, even the most disingenuous get it, that they cannot appeal to the majority. So they have to have these tools. And if you look at the EU, to keep the EU together, they need these countries. What's happening right now between with Hungary is, throwing them into a massive panic, because it's one of the subjects is, not falling into line. They can't control them. Well, they've been controlling them through the color revolution and through this election, manipulation process that they use, that's focused mostly on the courts in any country. They just come in and they start paying off the high-ranking judges in each different country. But that, you can see how important this is to them. And this is the only way they're going to be able to continue to cheat, especially with USAID being pulled down now. So it's completely plausible that this is what is, we've got to keep this war going or else, which is despicable, because the war is still as horrific as ever. The deaths are still up to 9,000 a week, which is crazy. I think we even had a video of some drone
I have that.
casualties.
Here we go.
But it's just another video to show people what we're not seeing, that the horrors of war, guys are just getting blown up who aren't even looking through the sights of their weapon.
I can't even watch this crap anymore. I mean, it's just too disturbing. But here we go. I mean, this is, combat porn. It's just not cool. I mean, I don't want my kids to have to deal with this garbage.
No, but it needs to be seen, because we talk about this war like it's a sporting event, and we just flippantly, this is my opinion, and then it's turned into a debate. It's not a debate. It's war where real men, innocent men who think they're going to do something patriotic, or who didn't even want to be there, are forced out there, and they're dying in droves for no reason. And I mean that. There is no reason. This war is a purposeless war. Everything about it is something other than it seems. It should never have started. There's no reason for Slavs to be killing Slavs.
It's depopulation.
Neighbors. It's
what it is.
total
It's a
depopulation.
satanic human sacrifice. That's what we're seeing. 9,000 a week
Yeah.
in 2025 is absurd. I mean,
Yeah.
the only goal is depopulation, so they can have. We put out an article that this former Ukrainian Kubela, I think he said, well, after the war, we're going to have to import Bangladeshis, Indians, third world nations.
Yeah.
This is all about killing the population so you can take the resources and then bring in the slaves to mine the resources. I think that's part of it. Maybe not all of it, but it's also depopulation.
Yeah. Well, Harari, he states that's his central premise, that we just don't need these people anymore because of AI and tech. We don't need people to man factories, so we need to cut the population by at least 500 million, and then use our resources smartly. And I'll just say this about that: what a demented, sociopathic view on humanity that is. The whole purpose of work is to keep people gainfully employed. In other words, keep them doing something. Every human has a right to live on this planet. And then we as humans have a responsibility to make the living conditions for ourselves and our fellow humans as viable as possible, as comfortable as possible. And one of the ways you do that is work. It's what so many of these Democratic politicians don't understand. Newsom doesn't understand. When you allow the factories, well, he's also an idiot, though. When you allow the factories to leave your small to medium-sized towns, I live in California, so Bakersfield, there's nothing in that town for people to live off of. There's nothing for them to make a living in the middle class, to raise their family, to go to school, and to live in a town, take pride in the town. And when you do that, you undermine the fabric of civilization. But the whole purpose of work, and every boss needs to understand that too, it's not some, privilege that you're allowing someone to work. Work is part of what we do as humans, and we keep ourselves employed, and we have to do that. No matter what AI becomes, we have to let humans continue to work. We can't go to a place where humans don't work, and then you fall right victim for people like this nut job millionaires who say we don't need these serfs anymore. We've got artificial intelligence and high tech that can run the world.
Well, it's anti-human, Pete. I mean, it's in the Genesis, go forth and multiply. I mean, that's what is commanded. And this is actually anti-human, anti-Christian. It's literally, I think we're dealing with the seed of Cain here. I mean, we're dealing with a satanic element that is maybe supernatural. I mean, it's insane what's going on. It's the face of evil, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Back to you. Sorry.
No, that's it. So it's just we're walking you through. The propaganda shifted. The targets now the West, people in the United States, people in Europe, trying to delude us into thinking that everything's okay. In fact, it's better than okay. Ukraine is winning. We got to keep the war going, and it is a sick effort. It's diabolical as anything we've ever seen, and you and I will stay on this all the way to the end because it matters. And once again, we don't take sides. We're not pro-Russian or pro-Ukrainian.
No,
we're pro those guys who just got a drone missile, embedded in their backs and stomachs without ever even know what hit them. We're pro those guys who are dying for no reason by the thousands.
On both sides.
And we believe it's worth stopping.
I agree. Let me just throw up a few things that we brought up for the show that we didn't get to. This is Hungary's response to Ukraine. Ukraine's lashing out at Hungary, where there's some deep-seated, localized animosity there from way back. This is talking about.
But just Todd, go back to that real quick because it's a good one. So this just shows you there even the Ukraine's neighbors are pointing out the shallowness of their lies. So, Zelensky said that the UAVs violated their airspace, and Syrskyi claimed that they were just scouting the industrial potential of border areas. So this is Syrskyi making an excuse for the Hungarians, which means he's making an excuse for the fake drones that Ukraine is flying across these borders. They were caught again, and they come up with a ridiculous excuse. But Hungary is really, and this is the same part of Hungary. This guy is anti-war, neutral toward Russia. But again, it's showing the lack of imagination, the lack of facts surrounding all these propaganda lies that are coming out of Ukraine these days.
Totally. This is Peskov talking about how dangerous it is to shoot down, talk about shooting down Russian aircraft, which is obvious to anyone with a brain. This is Orban talking about he's not going to stop buying oil from Russia, which is important because I think Trump knew that wasn't going to happen, and so that's is another reason why he said, "Okay, I'll sanction Russia if all of the EU stops buying oil," which is not going to happen because that's their whole economy. Israel,
right, and Hungary's landlocked. They can't pivot and get oil from a new source and have any chance of their already tenuous economy surviving. So common sense, and look, Orban said, that's diplomacy. Just say out loud the logic of why it makes sense or doesn't make sense to your country. And that's what he did to Trump. And Trump said, "You're right." And, we can't get you, but what about, England, and what about France? They're not landlocked.
Yeah.
So
this is Israel is shipping Patriots. That's just a point of order there to Ukraine.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point about that, Todd. Yeah. Israel, what's come out in the last couple of weeks, Israel has said that they perfected their laser anti-aircraft capability. And Ukraine, last week, Ukraine did a VTC. We showed, it was a video teleconference. We showed Petraeus was connected to it. It was the Alta Security Conference. They had 3 general officers that were part of it. They all VTC'd in, zoomed in, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And 2 of them mentioned the same thing. They said, "We've got some technology coming that's going to change the game, and we think we're going to reverse things." It's always let's hold on. There's a new technology, a game changer, but it's been out there. And when I saw this, it made me wonder: is the new Patriot that Israel is introducing, is it modified with one of their radars or something else? But it should be known to everyone that Israel's making money off this too. And again, you almost can't help to get into the nefarious sides of money laundering if now we're going to allow Israel to sell weapons to Ukraine that Israel gets from us, so Israel makes money off them. It's sick, and I just can't see how President Trump can allow that to happen.
Which is not America first at all.
It's not at all.
Yeah. A couple more here. This is Peskov talking about the Nord Stream destruction and how, we still don't know what's going on there. Nobody wants to look at it. Obviously, it was the West that destroyed Germany's energy. And then the drones over, Denmark, which is obviously some kind of, it's some intelligence service or some like paramilitary group doing this. It's not Russia. It's something else, likely CIA or whoever is. I talked to some people recently, maybe it was you, that said they were probably testing some of these technologies. I forget who it was that I spoke to recently about that. But
when you see the word professional actor, You know,
Yeah.
you act, okay, so does that mean like Tom Hanks is out there flying the thing?
No.
Or are you talking about by a professional actor? Are you talking about a paid individual who is acting, who paid to create propaganda, to create fear? When you
Yes.
say professional actor, and I think it's the latter.
Yes.
I think they know, and they're not talking about it. But again, this is despicable. The fire they're playing with the EU on this, false flag stuff is atrocious, and everyone should look at it that way. No, but the biggest safeguard is don't believe anything that comes out of the EU at face value. Wait, pressure test it. It's just a massive tsunami of propaganda that we're getting these days.
But they know
And
who's doing this, right? They know where the drones are coming from. They know
yes,
it's coming off a boat.
yes,
Here's the boat. Here's who owns the boat. Here's who's operating the boat. They know all of this. So they're letting this propaganda and fear spread on purpose, which is the point.
yes.
Yeah.
To get their people, keep their people scared, to keep their own global censorship techniques in place so they can stay in power and keep the populace at bay.
Wow. Pete, thank you very much, man. Anything else you want out?
Nope, I think we're good, Todd.
All right. We'll see you all next time, and not next time on Ukraine Sit Rep with Pete, but we'll be right back with the Skiff.